Hello and welcome back to my channel, History That Hits YouTube. This channel is devoted to spotlighting little-known history facts and heroes not taught in most American schools presently. Today is part 2 of the Harlem Hellfighters story. Remember to like and subscribe for more enlightening videos. During this turbulent time, there are two other significant events that happened after the close of World War I. I present these events, the Harlem Renaissance and the Red Summer of 1919, but I don't focus on them. In 1916, after sustained pressure from Harlem civic leaders, Governor Charles Whitman authorized an all-black National Guard unit, first called the 15th New York National Guard Regiment and later redesignated as the 369th Regiment, as the United States prepared for possible involvement in World War I. Most of the recruits came from Harlem itself, where roughly 50,000 of Manhattan's 60,000 Black Americans lived in the 1910s. Others joined from Brooklyn and from communities along the Hudson River, as well as from New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. In April 1918, the U.S. Army assigned the regiment to serve with the French Army for the remainder of America's role in the war, since many white American troops refused to serve in combat along Black troops. The soldiers received French arms and equipment, including helmets, belts, pouches, and rifles, although they kept their American uniforms. Once in France, the 369th was generally treated like any other French unit. The French were far less openly hostile than many white Americans, and they did not impose racial segregation on the regiment. France already relied on colonial forces that included non-white troops from places such as Morocco and Senegal, and wartime manpower shortages made the French less concerned with race than the United States Army. The Germans attempted to influence the men with propaganda, claiming Germany had done nothing wrong to Black Americans and that they should instead fight the United States for its greater than a century's oppression to them. The message backfired. Over the course of the war, the 369th spent 191 days in frontline trenches, more than any other American unit, it is believed, and suffered about 1,500 casualties, the heaviest losses of any U.S. regiment. By then, the 369th had already become famous as the Harlem Hellfighters, a name tied to its Harlem roots and hard-earned battlefield reputation. The French nicknamed the 369th as Men of Bronze, and to the Germans, they nicknamed them Hollenkämpfer or Hellfighters. In the war's final brutal battles in France, the regiment advanced through artillery fire, machine gun bursts, and shattered terrain with a level of discipline that impressed both friend and foe alike. The Germans had expected to meet resistance. Instead, they encountered the Harlem Hellfighters. While the 369th made up less than 1% of the soldiers deployed overseas, it was credited with capturing more than 20% of the territory assigned to American troops. Then came the late battles in France, where they faced German fire in some of the Army's most violent moments. But the Hellfighters kept moving. They pushed through artillery, machine gun fire, and chaos with a discipline that stunned allies and enemies alike. In the final days of World War I, when many believed the nightmare was over, the 369th Infantry Regiment was still in the fight. And in France, they were not just surviving, they were making history. Also, the regiment's band was just as important as the fighting men. Led by James Reese Europe, it traveled overseas with the unit and became one of the most celebrated military bands in Europe. Its performances lifted morale and helped introduce jazz to British, French, and other European audiences. The rhythm the Hellfighters brought home ignited the Harlem Renaissance, changing global culture forever. But when the war ended and the cheers faded, the question became, what happens when heroes go home to a country that never fully believed in them? When the shooting did finally stop, French townspeople welcomed the 369th as liberators. They cheered them, they shook their hands, they gave them food, flowers, smiles, and gratitude. For many of the soldiers, it was the first time in the war they had felt fully seen, and in their lives. In France, they were not a problem to be managed. They were heroes. The locals who welcomed them with open arms did something America refused to do. They treated these men as men. On December 13, 1918, about a month after Armistice Day, the French government awarded the Croix de Guerre to 171 individual members of the 369th Regiment and gave the entire unit a citation, which General Lebuc pinned to its colors. For the Hellfighters, those moments in France were not decoration, they were proof that they were heroes. Had the United States, the country they bled for, changed while the 369th were gone, or would they return to the same chains they left behind? The answer came in February 1919. Hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers, black and white, lined the streets for a parade honoring these war heroes. For the children of Harlem, this wasn't just a parade, it was proof that glory, honor, and heroism belonged to them too. For one brilliant, shining moment, America was forced to look them in the eye and see them as the giants they were. But every victory has a shadow. The same men who celebrated in France returned to America and stepped back into segregation, suspicion, and hate. The uniforms changed nothing. The medals changed nothing. The country that they had helped defend still treated them like outsiders. And for men like Corporal Lawrence Leslie McVeigh, that return must have felt like a cruel reversal. One world honoring him, the other refusing him. The Harlem Hellfighters had seen another world. They knew what respect felt like. And that made them a threat to anyone that wanted them silent. The Hellfighters returned not just as soldiers, but as witnesses to America's hypocrisy. Then came the Red Summer. Across the country, racial violence exploded. Black veterans were especially dangerous to the old order, not because they were violent, but because they had changed. The Red Summer of 1919 in the United States was a period of widespread white supremacist terrorism and racial riots across more than 36 U.S. cities and one rural county, targeting Black Americans. Hundreds of deaths and thousands of injuries resulted from mob violence, lynchings, and arson during this mid-1919 wave. Corporal Lawrence Leslie McVeigh represents a post-war story of the Hellfighters in human form. A man who had faced war in Europe came home to a battlefield of a different kind, where respect could vanish the moment the uniform came off. Corporal McVeigh, who had been awarded the French Croix de Guerre, a Bronze Star, and a Purple Heart for his bravery during the Meuse-Argonne offensive at Seychelles on September 29, 1918, was among the many soldiers who had spent 191 days in combat, believed to be the longest by any American regiment. Specific details of his post-war civilian career are not widely documented in the available records. McVeigh lived until 1968. His service in the 369th left a lasting legacy, as the regiment's actions and honors, including the Croix de Guerre, awarded to the entire unit, became part of the broader recognition of Black American contributions in World War I. Private Henry Johnson, the man who single-handedly fought off a German raiding party, returned home physically broken. He was denied a disability pension by the United States government, and the decorated war hero slipped into poverty and obscurity. The Harlem Hellfighters fought Germany and France. They fought something harder at home, being forgotten, diminished, and denied. The story is not about only war. It's about contradiction. It's about glory abroad and injustice at home. About men like Corporal Lawrence Leslie McVeigh and Private Henry Johnson, who carried both triumph and betrayal in the same uniform. But acknowledgement came far too late for these real-life American heroes who demonstrated unparalleled bravery, and that is why their story still matters. Decades later, America would finally recognize the Harlem Hellfighters, and history should never forget the men who were brave enough to fight for a country that was not yet brave enough to love them back. They did not sacrifice because America was perfect. They sacrificed because they believed America could become better. They marched through hatred without ever losing their humanity. That is true strength. That is true patriotism. I hope you enjoyed the true story of these heroes. Don't forget to like and subscribe to History That Hits YouTube to celebrate more little-known heroes. Until our next historical journey, be well, everyone.